So number one, you need to understand roles and responsibilities. You need to know who in your team is in charge of what and what they're responsible for. And I'm saying this because you don't want to be getting after the wrong person, and you need to know what to keep track of for that specific employee that's doing that specific task. This becomes very critical when you climb that totem pole and you're a manager of managers, because you need to understand that your group of managers is going to have different responsibilities. Even though they might have the same title, they just may be in charge of a little bit of different things, okay? Also, it's important to understand the culture regarding that specific location that they're in. So you as a manager need to really understand what your team is doing, their responsibilities, and their roles. I'll give you a brief example. If you have somebody that works maybe in HR, and you have that branch of HR, right? But then you have HR recruitment, and then you have HR legal, and maybe HR, that deals with the minor stuff there at an office. Yeah, they're all HR, but they're in charge of different things. And you don't want to go and start saying, hey, you're part of HR. How come this employee's upset at this? And they're just like, yo, I'm a recruiter. What are you talking about? And you're like, oh, my bad. You know what I mean? Maybe same department, different title, different roles, completely different responsibilities. As a manager, you need to know exactly what responsibilities your teams are in charge of. Next up is you need to know how to communicate with them depending on the type of person they are. And I mentioned this in the previous video, but it's very important. I'm going to hit it again. Too bad. If you have 10 employees, you'd say the same thing 10 different ways. All of them, okay? If you have 100 employees, you're going to say it 100 different ways because they all learn differently and they all receive feedback differently. I'll give you an example. If you have a person who's maybe a little bit brusque, but they're very good at receiving direct feedback, you tell them and they're like, whatever, man. But they do it and they understand. And guess what? That might be the method that they learn. That might be the method that they receive feedback. If you have somebody that's very passive, and if you start screaming at them and yelling at them and going all crazy on them, guess what? They're going to shut down. They're not going to work efficiently. You need to understand the way you communicate to the employee has to be tailored specifically for them. And you might be saying, I'm not going to do that. It's too much work. Why would I do that? I can just send an email. I can just talk to all of them at the same time. Yeah, you're right. You can do that. But the performance of your team is going to be better if at least you directly speak with your direct, team that reports to you. I'm not saying that if you're a manager of managers, you go and you talk to the bottom line of the person in person. No, you're not going to do that. Why? Because they have their own manager or supervisor that they report to. Keep that in mind. When I'm saying this, I'm saying that you need to talk to the people directly under you. But you need to know your team. You need to know the strengths and weaknesses of the people that report to you. And you need to be able to communicate to them efficiently. And you might say, well, why is this so important? Well, because you're a manager, right? You're not a frontline worker that's doing the task. You're a manager, and to manage, you delegate, and to delegate, you communicate, and to communicate properly, you're going to say it at a specific way that purposely fits the person that you're talking to. Also, make sure you actually delegate. Don't micromanage. Let the people do their job. If you are micromanaging your employees, you're not managing them, okay? I'll be completely honest. Now, all right, there's a time and place when things are completely wrong and everything is south, then okay, you might have to micromanage at least to get it up to par. But once things are running smoothly and people know what they have to do, and if you're there behind them micromanaging them, then that's telling them that you don't trust them to do their job. If you hire them for a reason and then you're there behind them every single day making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, you are making sure that they never learn and that they never get to the spot that you need them to be at because you keep babying them. As a matter of fact, they're probably thinking that you think they're stupid and that they can't do their task. Only micromanage if you completely know that the whole department is falling down. And you need to have some self-reflection there. If you don't know if your department is falling down, then you don't know your KPIs, you don't know the performance, you don't know what's going on. All right? Evaluate that yourself. Make sure it's true. Analyze the KPIs. If it's falling, micromanage a bit. Let them go once you've trained them properly, but don't be there behind them for the whole year. Now, I will say mass instructions are sometimes needed. You're not going to talk to everybody individually if you're going to tell them to do their workday trainings, right? That would take you forever. No, you just send an email and be like, hey, everybody, do your trainings. That's it. Good. Hey, everybody, we have 4th of July coming up. We're going to have a giveaway or whatever. Okay? Use a little bit of common sense, right? You don't have to do one-on-ones for everything. I'm just saying, if it's affecting your bottom line, you probably should not do a mass communication. Unless it was maybe a mistake and you already talked to that one person and now you want to make sure it prevents the mistake from happening across the board, then yes, you would reiterate that through an email. All right, so we've gone over communication and we've gone over, establishing goals and what their roles and responsibilities are, right? Well, what's next? So you want to make sure your team does not have barriers with other departments. If you're in charge of a specific team that is in operations and they work with, I don't know, in the same facility as HR or safety or whatever, and you feel that there's just that weird barrier there that they don't ever talk, and sometimes stuff happens and you're like, why didn't you just ask? It's like, oh, I don't know who to ask. You need to make sure that there's no barriers between your team and the other departments in your organization, because if there's barriers, you're restricting their communication, and they're probably working harder trying to find a solution to something if they would just ask the person who's actually doing it. For example, let's say you ask your manager or your supervisor, hey man, how many loads are these people moving a day or a week? And they're like, oh, I don't know, let me manually check every single load, and they're checking, and they're, oh, what Excel was it? Oh, it's actually in this one, let me see. Okay, 2 hours later, they give it to you. Well, guess what? If they would have just reached out to IT may already have that information in a Power BI. They'd be like, here's the link. You get it. Update it. Every minute it updates. And it has year-to-date information. Here, I'll even give you more than what you asked me, boss. You know what I mean? There needs to be that communication, and you have to understand, well, why didn't my boss just check that themselves if it's that easy to get? Because they might be traveling, they might be somewhere, the customer might be asking, and they just don't have the tools in front of them to actually check, so they're going to ask you. And if you take 2 hours to respond to them because you just didn't know that IT has a tool set that you could have leveraged, then guess what? You're not being operationally efficient. I'll give you another example. Let's say that you work at a warehouse, and there's two different departments. One is transportation, the other one is warehousing and the yard. And you have trailers that belong to you in that yard. And every day you have to do a physical inventory of the trailers to see what's there, because you don't have any way to pull it. And the warehouse has a WMS system that actually has that information. And you're taking the time out of somebody's day to do that, to get the numbers, when there's a system that literally exists already that's being used, and you didn't know because you just didn't reach out to the department that's next to you. Okay? Reach out. If you have a question, ask. Ask the department that might know. Be like, hey, do you know if this exists? No, it doesn't. Okay, you know anybody who might? Yeah, they might. Oh, yeah, it does exist. Oh, no, it doesn't exist. Hey, okay, raise my hand. Hey, I think it'd be beneficial if we had a report that says this. Yeah, let me work on it. You know what I mean? You need to break barriers of departments, and you can't just put yourself in a little bubble in your little group and say, oh, well, we only do this because it's our department. No. Break those barriers, get help from other departments, and they will help you, because there's going to be times where they need your help, and if you can give it to them, even if you don't get anything in return, it'll be beneficial for you at one point in the future. Okay, so now in your management of teams, you already broke down the wall and you gave them the availability to communicate with other departments so they can leverage the information that they didn't know was available to them. But now let's say that hiccup is in your internal team. Okay, there's just major beef between them. I don't know how extreme the beef is. You might be thinking of like, damn, yeah, there is a lot of beef, dude. You don't know how deep it is. I don't know. But the point is that beef can't exist for the operations to run efficiently. So what I would do is I would bring them in and I would tell them, hey, I know that there's tension in the air between you and this employee. Don't let them tell you their side of the story. Don't let them vent. You're not a therapist. You cannot have them start telling you all the crazy stuff that happened between them, because you're going to be liable if you do, because now they told you. You don't have to just say, hey, I don't know what happened between you. I know there's tension. No, well, it's because, no. Yeah, stop, please. Don't go into that. I'm just listen to me for now. I don't want to know what happened, but put it behind you, because it's affecting the operation. It's affecting the other people, and you're violating the ethics policy because you're in here upsetting the environment. You're in here with these tensions, and you guys are arguing, and we can't have that here in the workforce. We're not here to argue, we're here to work, and you're affecting other people around you, and that's really bad for the operation. You have to think about that. And they might say, you know what? Yeah, it's not even me, it's them. Yeah, it's fine. I'm going to talk to them right now after I'm talking to you, and I'm going to tell them the exact same thing. I don't want to know the story. Put it behind you, because guess what? We have a task to do, and we need to accomplish it. And if you guys are too busy bickering and being against each other, then there's going to have to be some parting ways between the company and you. And it's that simple. We can't have that type of conflict in the workforce. Now, I would really emphasize not to let them talk about their experiences. It could cause some issues in the future, but just let them know that it needs to be put behind them. You cannot dwell in the past. And it's for their best interest and for the company's best interest to just let it go. Just work together. And it's important to know that you don't have to like the employee for them to work together. That's pretty basic, right? Like we know that. We know that you don't have to like a person to work with the person. It's that simple. You're here to work. You're not here to be friends or best friends. You're here to work. And if you can't draw a line between you not liking somebody and you liking somebody and how that impacts your work experience with them, then you might not be fit for the job, right? So, as a manager, you need to draw a line on that. You can't let them do whatever they want. You can't let them fight. You need to bring them in, say, hey, you're putting a stop to it, put it behind you. Learn to not take personal opinion of an individual and put your feelings into it while you're working. It's that simple. If they can't do that, then you need to cut. You need to cut them. You need to end ways because it's only going to spoil the rest of the group. So, what is the goal of managing teams, right? What is the end goal of you being a manager of teams? The end goal is to have a team that operates so efficiently. It's like a machine, and a machine that works well is smooth, and that's what you want. A smooth operation that flows well, that is able to handle impasses, anything that's a barrier, something happens that isn't part of the SOP, that they can pivot because they flow so well together. That is the end goal of managing teams. You also want to make sure that your team knows that they can count on each other, and this is where those hiccups need to be squashed. Because if you have a team and they say, man, that guy sucks, he's not reliable, he leaves stuff pending. Guess what? That's not a team that trusts each other, and that's what you need. You need a team that trusts each other, a team that when they say, hey, I'm out, the next person covers, and they cover well. That is what you need. And the way you get there is not just by managing the teams, but by using the rest of the videos that I've showed you, is getting the KPIs, doing the one-on-one coachings, and really molding them to synergize well with each other, being team players. Something else that you need to consider as well is give them tasks that overlap with each other. I'm not saying directly have them be doing exactly what the other person is doing, but have them do stuff that make them mingle with each other, because that builds bonds. If they have the same goal, they're going to work together to accomplish that goal. And it also gives that instruction to have them kind of get their feet wet with what their friend does, because you don't want, not their friend or peer, because you don't want somebody to feel like, man, that guy doesn't do anything, and then they kind of get a little bit of training and they're like, wow, I didn't know you did that. This whole time I thought you just sat there and started at the computer for 20 hours. No, I actually do all these reports and whatever. Well, guess what? They didn't know that because they hadn't gotten their feet wet. Once they know their task, let them get their feet wet a little bit. Give them a task or joint task with another team member or peer, and that way they learn what the peers do and they can actually help out, and vice versa. They help each other out and they have an understanding, and it builds better camaraderie. If your team has various tasks, okay, if they're all doing the same thing, then you don't really have to consider this. Also, please make sure that you tell your team they're doing a good job. I know some of you are probably like, man, why would I do that? That's something new. I didn't ever ask to do that. Nobody ever told me I was doing a good job. Well, guess what? The statistics show that people want to be told they're doing a good job. And if you don't believe that, do your own research. I already presented my stats, present yours, and maybe you're right, but I doubt it, because I've seen enough to know that employees really do like being told that they're doing good. And I've managed enough people and I've done enough surveys myself, and I've asked the team members themselves and they tell me this. So it's not just like, oh, it's a one-time thing. No, it's actual people want that. Now, if you're a manager of a large group, I would even do quarterly plaques that say, hey, you know what, you were awesome, here's a shirt, a hat, a yearly one that gives them an actual award. That would be awesome. The teams would love that, and they would strive for better performance if you guys actually praise them and give them rewards. And also on that note, don't be that boss that feels like you shouldn't be praising your employees because their performance is going to be lackluster, or that you shouldn't because that's their job. Honestly, you're a boss, you're not a parent's figure. You're there to really manage the team and to be a leader. And to be a leader and a manager, you need to give praise. Okay? It's that simple. And that's it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for joining. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Down in the bottom, I have a link to our school community that you should really join. There's going to be groups of people who are like-minded, who are motivated, who bring all sorts of experiences that we can all learn from. I also have a link to our website, so if you're interested in that, check it out. There's some coaching sessions and also a list of books that I really recommend you guys to read. And that's it for today. Thank you guys so much.